Hey, 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 welcome to Journey to SEA 2024. This is Shelley-Ann Edwards Barron, your host and creative writing specialist, here to talk all things report writing and narrative writing. Thank you for joining me. I know this is a little bit later than I usually begin. And for those of you who are here able to take in the live, thank you so much. But of course, I know most people really look at the replays. Thank you so much for doing that. And please feel free to send me messages, ask me questions, because I really would like to know what it is you need so that I could make sure and have the lives as useful as possible for you. So this week we are on to episode 15. Wow, I can't believe it's 15 weeks already. And we're getting into the setting discussion with narratives, but we have a couple things to finish off with reports in terms of transitions before we really move on from that section. And for those of you who are new to the lives, we do this every Tuesday. Well, yeah, that's the plan. Sometimes, there are some adjustments, but you just need to check in with SEA Peaceful Approach or my Facebook page, Wood Coach Youth, and you would get any updates if there are any variations. But generally, we're here every Tuesday talking about report writing and narrative writing, supporting the young writers, teachers, and parents as they prepare for SEA 2024. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Shelley-Ann Edwards Barron, and I'm a creative writing specialist. I focus heavily on multisensory learning because I believe that's the way to engage as many users as possible when it comes to writing. Students don't generally have a very great attitude toward writing when it comes to working toward their SCA creative writing. And I believe that using the multisensory approach not only helps them to understand what they need to understand more effectively, but it helps them create a more positive attitude toward writing that is going to serve them well into secondary school and beyond. So, if you want to know more about multisensory writing, please feel free, send me a message, ask your questions. I'm here to provide information as much as I can. And if you want to learn how to do what I do in terms of teaching the report writing and narrative writing with multisensory activities and strategies and so on, then you would need to enroll in my creative writing professional development programs. This Friday, the 21st, we have how to teach report writing, and that comes with the textbook, workbook, and journal series on report writing that I have. It's part of the cost of the workshop. Next week, Friday, that's the 28th, we're going to be focusing on narrative writing, and that comes with the 12-point plot development. If you've heard me speak about that before, you can get a copy of the poster and flashcards where that is concerned. And then the following Friday, which is August 4th, we will be discussing how to give effective feedback to young writers. Now, feedback is one of the absolute keys in terms of helping students develop their writing. We can do all the teaching and all the instruction, but if you don't give effective feedback, students are not going to know what to do to make the adjustments and changes that are necessary. And if you register for two or more of those workshops, then you would be sent an email access to a community that I'm beginning, which is teaching creative writing the multisensory way. You would have access to me regularly and insights and tips regarding multisensory learning. All right. So, yeah, please check in with me, send me messages, let me know what's going on with you. What are you trying? What are you stuck on? Because I really want to be able to provide as much information as possible. Now, in today's session, we're dealing with the transitions. If you missed last week, then I know last week was kind of crazy. We had some, adjustments with the days. But you can check the archives. The videos are on my Facebook page, Wood Coach Youth. They are in the Facebook group SEA, the Peacefield Approach. and they're on my website and on YouTube with Coach Limited. So check in. If you can't find them for any reason, just send me a message and I'll send you the links so that you'd be able to access them. All right. Because last week I did the introduction to transitions, what transitions are, why I recommend transition phrases over transition words, even though both are quite useful. Um, some of the transitions to avoid, some that you could use, and so on. And today, with transitions, we're going to be talking about, I'll be showing a few examples and explaining why they work, and so that you can actually use these transitions as part of the writing. Students can learn them or just know how to implement them in their own writing, and that would allow the transitions to be covered and for the report to flow way more smoothly. And if it is that you're wondering about why transitions are actually needed in a report, transitions, especially transition phrases, adjust the format of sentences and make them more sophisticated and fluent. And therefore, transitions in this way, what they do is that they elevate the writing and shows the student's ability to connect ideas effectively. And that ability to connect ideas effectively translates into a more formal tone for the report. And of course, if you missed that episode, go back into the archives and look at it again. Formal tone is like the number one thing when it comes to reports and getting students to score within the 18-20 bracket of the narrative scoring. So you really want to make sure that students understand what is formal tone and how they can achieve formal tone. Transitions are one way that students can contribute to developing the formal tone that's necessary for report writing. So let's look at a few examples. And of course, as I said last week regarding how transitions are used, remember there's a long list of different type of transitions, but the transitions that are most useful for reports come in pretty much two categories: time and location. So those are the two that you really want to focus on, and they are the ones that would really help the report develop much more effectively, right? So, okay, let me share. I'm going to show you some examples of what you can put in the paragraphs when you want to talk about things that are happening before. Then we're looking at things that are happening during, and then things that are happening at the end of the report. So remember that let me see. No, we're going to use slides. I'm going to share my screen. Um, Remember that with reports, if you recall, we're working with that five paragraph structure. And in the five paragraph structure, what you have are um, you have an introduction, then you have the body of the report, which is split into three parts, and then you have the conclusion. So, what is happening here is that the introduction is set, and when we get later on into the term, we are going to actually go through the introduction, and I'll talk a lot more about how to format the introduction effectively. Um, but so you have the introduction, and that's pretty much set in the way that it should be done. And then your conclusion can also be something that is set. What makes a difference is the middle of the report, where you have what happens before, what happens during, and what happens at the end. So if you look at it this way, your report is actually the introduction is a summary, and then you have the beginning, middle, end of the situation that you're reporting about, and then you have what we can call the aftermath or consequences of the situation, right? So your beginning, middle, end of the report, the actual situation, this is where your transitions would be most effective and come in most handy. So here we're looking at if you're going to mention actions that happened before the main situation, then these are some of the transitions that you can use. So we have four options here. We have previously, earlier, before, and prior to. Now, previously functions as a transition word. We have the comma after the word, and then we're specifying the time at which this thing happened. Now, this is very useful. Remember, a report is about location, time, and actions that are happening within a space and within a time. So indicating the time here can be quite useful, and it really gives more specific details for the report itself. Um, it doesn't have to be like the exact time, however, you can use a time period once it's clear what that time period could likely be. Lunchtime is generally between 12 to 1. At offices is usually between 11 to 12, at schools. And so we have an idea of when things are happening. And it's also important to note that there are times when you are not going to know the specific time something occurred. It is not always possible for a student to know that exact time. I mean, you left class, you went to the cafeteria, you're having lunch, and then you see a bullying incident happening. Most students don't have watches, and therefore, they're not carrying cell phones either. So they're unlikely to be able to give a specific time in many instances. So using a time period is a good way to be specific enough without sounding kind of, um, I guess, overly critical in terms of that specific time. When I mean, you kind of be guessing when you give the time. So now I have previously at around 2 p.m. Now, many people use the word approximately, which is, I guess you could say, a more formal and more sophisticated word than around. So you could replace that there as needed. But I think this sentence here works okay. Then we have earlier, at lunchtime. So we know what time earlier. Then we have before Richard fell. So we're giving before this thing happened, these actions took place. And then prior to making the announcement. So again, we're looking at showing the relationship between two actions by using the transition. So it's a good idea to um, think about the types of transitions that you're going to need for the particular part of the report. And so these are the ones that, and mind you, these are not the only ones, there are others, but these, if a student uses two of these in their paragraph two of the five paragraph report, which talks about what happens before, then I think that would be sufficient. Now let's look at what happened during. Now, during the situation, what we're talking about is like during the main part of the report, which is the focus of the report. Really, this is the incident, the accident, the step-by-step details of what the situation is that's being reported on, and that helps students um, really go into details and give explanations on that step by step chronological development of whatever the situation is. And these are again quite a few. These are mainly transition phrases, because like I said, transition phrases tend to give a bit more sophistication to their writing, because what they do is that they create complex sentences, um, with the coordinating and subordinating clause, and those kinds of sentences really elevate the writing. So, all right, so we have at the same time during the assembly, or you could say during whatever the situation was, while this was happening. So we're giving again time, order, and transition phrases that indicate time, show the relationship between events and actions. So when we talk about before, we're really talking about which one first, which one next. And we're focusing on the one that came first to highlight what happened before the situation. In this case, we're looking at during the situation. So we're looking at things that are happening at the same time. A situation where we have two things, working together, so that we can use any of these phrases. And again, I want to stress these are not the only ones, but these are definitely more than a few that students can work with. And I think, again, using two of these in a paragraph, that's the middle paragraph, paragraph 3, can really enhance the student's writing. Let's look at occurring after. So this is the situation where this is what the kind of transitions you might want to use for paragraph 4, because remember, paragraph 1 is summary, paragraph 2 what happened before, events leading up to the situation, paragraph 3 during the situation, paragraph 4 immediately after the situation, and then paragraph 5 would be consequences, outcomes, and so on. Excuse me. So afterward, transition word here. 2 minutes later that morning, at around, at approximately, we can say approximately instead of around if you want, a more sophisticated type language. Um, we could also say approximately 2 minutes later, because again, with the time, when you're being specific with time like this, think about the actual situation and how likely it is for a student to be able to have that exact timing. Chances are they wouldn't. So the word approximately is going to be used quite often in reports. When the performance concluded, so now we're going to talk about what happens next. And after the teacher informed us of our results, we're talking about what's going to happen next. Now, next, then, those are all good transition words. But like I said, I favor and recommend transition phrases, because what they do is that they really take the students' writing to a next level by creating complex sentences and allowing students to demonstrate their ability with sentences. Now, these are things that students are going to have to practice this, but of course, as we always do, we present the information, then we give students an opportunity to see what they look like in paragraphs, then we work with the students to practice, then we give independent practice with the context before we give students like complete reports to write. So this week, as we're continuing with an understanding of transition words and phrases, what you want to do is to work with the student, work with your child to create transition phrases that they can use, and show them how those transition phrases are used. They can create a checklist, or a list of ones that they would use regularly, and have them practice using them, so that when it gets to completing full reports, they know how to do that using the transitions. So I'm hoping that you're continuing with that practice. And of course, if it is you want some additional material on that and you want additional practice, you can get a copy of my textbooks. In each of the textbooks, in each lesson in the textbook, I have an activity. And remember, I said I work with multisensory learning. And there are some students who they need that little extra interaction in order to really have a better attitude to what they're writing. And so there's a really awesome activity with this particular one. But of course, there's also a worksheet in the textbook, plus the workbook has three additional worksheets for the section on transitions. There's explanations, and then the journal allows the student to take the writing a bit step further to really get into and understand transitions and transition phrases. So send me a message, send me a WhatsApp 717-4993 if you're interested in the text, and we could arrange to get you a copy. So again, it's textbook, workbook, journal to really give students that foundation. And this, of course, would be for students standard 4 going into 5 who don't have a foundation with report writing, and for 3s going into 4s in September for those who are just beginning their understanding and exploration of their report writing. Okay, so let's see the next topic we're working on with the um with our discussion on narrative writing is setting. Now I'm looking for an all right, so I think I'll use this one. I'm just going to share one slide on setting because I don't know why I don't do as many slides for the for the narrative writing as I do for the report writing. I think, of course, report writing is very technical, and it lends itself more to that kind of structure. So that's why I don't generally teach report writing as a separate class by itself, only because I do it with my one-on-one students, but I generally have narrative writing classes during the term. I am doing a report writing session for foundation for reports this vacation. We had our first class yesterday, which was pretty awesome. Today we're doing our first experiment. I'm really looking forward to that. Which reminds me, I need to get my materials for that class. Nothing fancy, everything child friendly, but I do need to get some materials for that. But anyway, so for the narrative writing, when it comes to setting, let me just show you the one slide that I'm hoping would really where we're just starting the discussion. So we're looking at what does setting entail and what do you do about setting in a narrative. Now, of course, we're looking at not having the setting all described in one location. It's just the same as we did with characters. We don't want everything in one location. We want the setting spread throughout the story. And the way to do that is to make sure that you understand the different aspects of setting. So when you look at the grading rubric, especially the holistic rubric, and by the way, if you don't have a copy of that, it's available in SEA, the Peacefield Approach. Just do a search in the files section, holistic rubric, and you would get both for narrative and for the reports. If you look at the narrative rubric, you would see that they talk about setting being vividly established and both time and place described. So it's important for students to recognize that setting is actually a combination of time and place. So we're not just talking about time as in 2 p.m., 3 p.m. We're really looking at time in terms of the time of the day and how that would affect what goes on at the location. And location has different components to it. Location isn't just about like, okay, we're in Trinidad and Tobago. We have specific location, we have general location, and these are the kinds of things that I talk about when I work with my students. teaching them about the setting, we also go through different ways to describe setting as well as how to um, integrate settings throughout the story. So, I mean, we're going to be looking at setting over the next week or so. Well, 2 weeks. So, this week from now till next Tuesday. And then next Tuesday, I'm going to add a bit more with setting to give you some more details on how to integrate setting into the writing. So, what it is you need to recognize now is have students explore setting. This is the vacation period. They're not necessarily at school, although I know many of them have lessons at school, after school lessons. July is like, school outside of school for most people. But what we're looking at is having the students really explore setting, have them do observations so that they can recognize what happens at certain times of the day. How is morning different from evening? What happens in the morning? What are the different things happening in the evening? Think about different locations and what happens at different locations. And then, of course, you want to think about imagery as you continue, because we're not just talking about what we see, we're also talking about what we hear, what we experience, smell, taste, touch. We want that vivid description. Remember, the rubric said setting is vividly established. So we're not just told about what's going on, we have setting being vividly established. So when it comes to setting, again, take the opportunity to have students write down their observations, think about ways they can describe things, think about ways that characters interact with the setting. And at this point, you want to do some reading as well so that students can see how setting is described in in stories, so that they can observe how setting is described in stories. And you want them to maybe, look at some short films so that they can see and understand how setting is described in stories. So at this point, in terms of introducing setting, you're not asking students to write about the setting just yet. What you're doing is building their vocabulary, introducing them to how setting is used in writing. So you can go online, get some short stories, and have them look at the way setting is described in short stories. You want them to explore different, their own setting, gather details, and really do a little bit of research to understand the various aspects of setting. And then next week, then we will start working a bit more in detail on the actual descriptions of the setting. So we want to introduce the concept of setting being both time and place, have that discussion about how location affects the interaction, how location can be represented using the different types of imagery. We're looking at how time affects what happens at a location. And we'll be going through all those kinds of discussions this week. Perhaps choose a different location every day during this week. So we have classroom at school, we have playground at school, we have inside the house, kitchen, bedroom, living room. We have locations like, the beach, we have a park, we have different buildings. So make a short list or long list on different types of locations that could possibly be included in a story, and have students brainstorm, come up with ideas about what kinds of things would be interesting to talk about. Why would they want to mention this? What would readers want to know? These are the things that you'd be discussing when you're talking about setting. And so that would really give the student a solid foundation. All right. So yeah, this session today is a little bit shorter because I began a bit late, but I think you have all you need to work with in terms of really getting a student aware of setting and thinking about the things that they would need to work with where setting is concerned. And then next week, you would start really putting it together and writing about it. So, all right, so that is it in terms of the narrative writing and setting. We're talking more about setting next week. So be sure to check in then and get the rest of the information. And for those of you who are interested in the textbooks, the good news is that I would be at a business expo this Friday. I'm going to be there. The expo begins at 11 and the booth is going to be set up, but I would personally be there from about quarter past one, going into maybe half past one. It's at the Mount Lambert Community Center. I'm going to post all the information about it in SEA The Peaceful Approach on my Facebook page, Word Coach Youth, so that if you wanted to stop by, you can take a look at the textbooks, decide, so you can see the insides and see what what the books are like. I have the 12-point plot development poster and the flashcards. And of course, you'd be able to get a chance to chat with me, ask me questions about the programs in person. And if it is you're interested in learning how to do what I do, as I said, the reason I'm going to be at the expo from 1:30 is because I have that workshop, how to teach report writing, on Friday, and that would come with a copy of the textbooks so that, well, the textbook, workbook, and journal, so that you not only understand how to teach, but you would have materials that you can work with that would lay the foundation of the report writing. So, send me a message, ask your questions. I'm here to support as best as I can with creative writing as you journey toward SCA 2024. So that's the end of our presentations today. And thank you so much for those of you who were able to take in the live and stick around till the end. I really do appreciate it. And for those of you who are looking at the recording or the replay, thank you so much for taking the time out. All right. So keep working with your students, keep working with your child one step at a time. You're going to get there, lay the foundation, and we're making sure that students have everything they need to write well. Okay, have a wonderful rest of today, and I'll see you again next week, Tuesday, unless you stop by the expo, in which case I'll see you Friday. All right, take care. Bye bye.